The sun was setting behind Manhattan's towering skyscrapers as Rose Chen pulled up to the Grand Plaza Hotel in her understated black Tesla. She'd specifically chosen to dress down for this meeting, wearing a simple navy blazer and pearl earrings, the same outfit she'd worn when closing her last billion-dollar deal. 20 years of building a tech empire had taught her that true power rarely needed flashy displays. As she stepped into the marble-floored lobby, the subtle shift in atmosphere was impossible to miss. The welcoming smiles that greeted other guests suddenly became tight-lipped. The front desk staff exchanged quick glances, their eyes darting between her and each other like a poorly choreographed dance. "Good evening," Rose said, approaching the counter with the quiet confidence that had become her trademark. "I have a reservation for the Madison Suite. I'm here for a meeting with the European Investment Group." The front desk clerk, a young man with perfectly gelled hair, barely looked at his computer screen before responding. "I'm not seeing any reservation under your name, ma'am." His voice carried that special kind of politeness that somehow managed to sound like an insult. Rose pulled out her phone and pulled up the confirmation email. "Here's my booking reference. It was confirmed 3 weeks ago." The hotel manager, a tall man with graying temples and an expensive suit, materialized beside the clerk. He introduced himself as Richard Wilson, though he didn't extend his hand for a handshake. "Is there a problem here?" "Mr. Wilson, I have a confirmed reservation for the Madison Suite," Rose explained, keeping her voice steady. She'd been in enough boardrooms to recognize power plays when she saw them. Wilson made a show of checking the computer himself, his fingers tapping unnecessarily loud on the keyboard. "I do apologize, but it seems there was a system error with your booking. Unfortunately, we're fully booked for tonight due to a major conference." He paused, then added with a thin smile, "Perhaps I could suggest the Holiday Inn downtown. They usually have availability." The meaning behind his words was crystal clear. Rose had encountered this type of discrimination countless times early in her career, though it had been a while since anyone had been quite so blatant about it. She noticed how other guests were being checked in smoothly, their reservations mysteriously unaffected by any system errors. A young woman standing nearby was openly filming the interaction on her phone, her face a mixture of shock and disgust at what she was witnessing. Several other guests in the lobby had stopped to watch, some whispering among themselves, others looking uncomfortably away. Rose took a deep breath, remembering her mother's words. Sometimes, the best revenge is letting people think they've won. She'd built her tech company from nothing, turning rejection after rejection into fuel for her success. This would be no different. "I see," she said simply, sliding her phone back into her purse. "Thank you for your honesty about the situation." She turned to leave, but paused and looked back at Wilson. "You know, it's interesting how some people can run a business for years and never understand what truly makes it valuable." As she walked out of the lobby, she could hear Wilson smugly telling his staff something about maintaining certain standards. What he couldn't see was the slight smile playing on Rose's lips. She pulled out her phone and dialed her chief financial officer. "Ming, remember that conversation we had about diversifying our real estate portfolio? I think I found the perfect opportunity. Get me everything you can on the Grand Plaza Hotel's ownership structure. And Ming, let's keep this quiet, very quiet." Rose slid back into her Tesla, her mind already racing with plans. They thought they'd seen the last of her, but she was about to teach them a very expensive lesson about judging people by their appearance. Sometimes the best way to change a broken system was to buy it and fix it yourself. The evening crowd at the Grand Plaza Hotel had thinned out, leaving behind the quiet hum of luxury that expensive places wear like perfume. The massive crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the marble floors where, just hours earlier, Richard Wilson had turned away a billionaire without realizing it. In the now quiet lobby, Wilson stood with a small group of his staff, his stance relaxed as he loosened his silk tie. "Did you see how quickly we handled that situation?" He chuckled, leaning against the front desk. "Can't have just anyone walking in here thinking they can stay at the Grand Plaza. We have a reputation to maintain." The front desk clerk from earlier laughed nervously, his eyes darting around the lobby. "Sir, maybe we shouldn't." "Shouldn't what?" Wilson interrupted, his voice carrying across the empty space. This is exactly why our guests pay premium rates. They expect a certain atmosphere. He straightened his jacket, proud as a peacock showing off its feathers. What Wilson didn't notice was Maimwam, Rose's personal assistant, sitting in one of the plush lobby chairs, apparently absorbed in a phone call. But her phone wasn't making a call, it was recording every word. May had slipped back into the hotel after Rose left, blending in perfectly with the business travelers with her laptop bag and professional attire. You should have seen her face when I suggested the Holiday Inn, Wilson continued, earning a few uncomfortable laughs from his staff. These people need to learn their place. Next thing you know, they'll all think they can just walk in here with their online booking confirmations. A young bellhop shifted uncomfortably, clearly wanting to be anywhere else. Wilson didn't seem to notice or care about his staff's discomfort as he continued his tirade. I've been in this business for 25 years, he boasted, checking his reflection in the polished elevator doors. I can spot trouble the moment it walks through those doors. That's why the owners trust me to maintain standards. Mee's fingers tightened around her phone, but her face remained perfectly neutral as she pretended to end her call. She gathered her things slowly, capturing every self-incriminating word. A cleaning lady pushing her cart through the lobby caught Mee's eye and gave her a small, knowing nod. It was clear from the faces of the staff that this wasn't the first time they'd heard this kind of talk from their manager. Sir, a young receptionist ventured carefully. I checked again, and she did have a confirmed reservation. It was properly paid for and… Emmy, Wilson cut her off with a patronizing smile. You're new here, so let me explain how things work. Sometimes we have to protect our guests from uncomfortable situations. Trust me, everyone's happier this way. As May walked toward the exit, she heard Wilson launching into another story about a family he turned away last month. Her phone was still recording. She stepped out into the cool night air and sent a quick text to Rose. Got it all. You won't believe what he said. Minutes later, in her penthouse office across town, Rose watched the recording on her tablet, her expression unreadable. She'd built her tech empire by understanding how people think, by anticipating their moves, and most importantly, by knowing when to let them dig their own graves. Send the video to our legal team, she told May over the phone, and get me the names of every board member and major shareholder of the hotel group. It's time to show Mr. Wilson what real power looks like. Rose walked to her floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the glittering city lights. In her reflection, she could see the same determined expression she'd worn when she started her company with nothing but a laptop and a dream. Now, with billions at her disposal and justice on her mind, she was about to teach the Grand Plaza Hotel a lesson they'd never forget. Also, she added, a slight smile playing on her lips, schedule a meeting with our investment team for tomorrow morning. I think it's time we expanded into the hospitality industry. Over the next 3 weeks, the elegant offices of Chen Technologies buzzed with quiet determination. Rose had assembled a small, trusted team to dig into the Grand Plaza Hotel's history. But she wasn't just looking for business records, she was uncovering stories, dozens of them, each more infuriating than the last. Look at this, said May, spreading printouts across Rose's glass conference table. 6 separate complaints in the last month alone. A famous musician turned away because his reservation disappeared. A successful author told the hotel was fully booked during a half-empty weekend. A family of doctors redirected to another hotel because of supposed plumbing issues in their floor. Rose picked up one of the papers, her eyes narrowing as she read. And all of them had confirmed reservations, just like me. Their investigation had started small, with a few posts on social media asking about experiences at the Grand Plaza. The response had been overwhelming. Former guests emerged from everywhere, sharing similar stories of mysterious lost reservations and thinly veiled excuses. But the most revealing information came from the hotel's own employees. A former housekeeper named Lynn had been the first to come forward, her hands shaking as she sat in Rose's office. They had a code, Lynn explained, clutching her cup of tea. When certain guests arrived, the front desk would call housekeeping about special maintenance needs. That was the signal to suddenly mark rooms as unavailable. She paused, fighting back tears. I quit after 3 months. I couldn't be part of it anymore. More employees followed, bellhops, kitchen staff, even a former assistant manager. Each brought pieces of the puzzle, painting a picture of systematic discrimination hidden behind luxury and prestige. Rose's legal team worked around the clock, documenting everything. They discovered the hotel had been covering up complaints by offering generous compensation packages, complete with strict confidentiality agreements. "The owner doesn't even know half of what's happening," explained a former HR employee who had recently quit. "Wilson handles most problems before they reach the corporate office. He calls it maintaining standards, but we all knew what that meant." One evening, as Rose reviewed the growing pile of evidence, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from a current front desk employee. "Just overheard Wilson bragging about sending you to Holiday Inn. Still doesn't know who you are. Says it's his best decision this month." Rose smiled, but there was no humor in it. She walked to her office window, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled over Manhattan. The Grand Plaza's distinctive roofline was visible in the distance, its elegant architecture hiding ugly truths. "May," she called, not turning from the window. "Contact our financial team. I want to know every weakness in their corporate structure, every debt, every struggling investment, every unhappy shareholder." "Already on it," May replied, tapping on her tablet. Their parent company's stock has been underperforming for 3 quarters. Several board members are looking to sell their shares, and, she paused for effect, their biggest loan comes up for renewal next month. Rose nodded, her reflection in the window overlapping with the hotel's distant silhouette. She'd built her company by creating technology that connected people, that broke down barriers. Now she would use that success to teach the Grand Plaza Hotel a lesson about true hospitality. "Set up meetings with their major shareholders," she instructed. Quietly. "We don't want Wilson or his friends to know what's coming." She turned back to her desk, picking up Lynn's tearful statement. "It's time to show them what happens when you judge people by their appearance instead of their character." As night fell over the city, Rose's team continued their work, gathering stories, collecting evidence, and preparing for what would become one of the most talked-about corporate takeovers in recent history. The Grand Plaza Hotel had no idea that their perfect world was about to be turned upside down, all because they turned away the wrong person on the wrong day. The late autumn wind whipped around the skyscrapers of Manhattan as Rose worked quietly behind the scenes, moving her pieces into place like a master chess player. She had spent decades in the tech world learning how to turn setbacks into opportunities, and now those skills were about to pay off in an unexpected way. The parent company's stock dropped another 2% today, May reported, setting down a steaming cup of green tea on Rose's desk. Outside the window, rain started to fall, creating rivers of light in the darkening city. Their shareholders are getting nervous. Rose nodded, studying the financial reports spread across her desk. She'd discovered that the Grand Plaza Hotel was just one property in a larger hospitality group that was struggling to keep up with modern times. Their old-fashioned approach wasn't just hurting people, it was hurting their bottom line. "Have you seen their customer satisfaction ratings?" Rose asked, turning her laptop screen toward May. "They're dropping faster than their stock price. Turns out discrimination is bad for business." She allowed herself a small smile. Who would have thought? Through carefully chosen investment firms, Rose had already started buying shares in the hotel's parent company. Small amounts at first, nothing to raise alarms. It was like watching drops of water fill a bucket, one at a time, barely noticeable, until suddenly it was close to overflowing. "The board meeting is next week," May reminded her. "We've already spoken with 12 of the major shareholders. They're interested in what we have to say." Rose remembered those meetings well. She hadn't mentioned the discrimination at first. Instead, she talked about modernization, about bringing the hotel group into the current century, about increasing profits through inclusion rather than exclusion. The shareholders' eyes had lit up at the mention of higher returns. Only then had she shown them the evidence, the videos, the testimonies, the pattern of discrimination that could explode into a PR nightmare at any moment. One board member had actually gone pale watching Wilson's recorded rants. "How long has this been going on?" he'd asked, his hand shaking as he set down his coffee cup. "Long enough," Rose had answered simply. "The question is, how much longer do you want it to continue?" Now, as evening settled over the city, Rose reviewed her strategy one more time. Her team had identified every weakness in the hotel's corporate structure, every pressure point that could be used to force change. The loan papers came through, May announced, setting down another folder. Would you believe their biggest loan is with Pacific Trust Bank? Rose actually laughed at that. Pacific Trust's CEO was an old friend. They'd started their businesses around the same time, helping each other through the tough early days. One phone call was all it would take to make that loan renewal very, very interesting. Send flowers to Linda at Pacific Trust, Rose instructed, and set up a lunch meeting for next week. I think it's time to catch up with an old friend. As night fell over Manhattan, Rose stood at her window, watching the lights of the Grand Plaza Hotel shine in the distance. In the reflection of the glass, she could see the determined expression that had carried her through countless challenges. The same expression she'd worn when Wilson had turned her away. Mr. Wilson is still there, May said quietly, checking her phone. Still turning people away. Yesterday it was a famous musician. Today it was a successful surgeon. He still has no idea what's coming. Rose turned from the window, her mind already moving to the next phase of her plan. Some people think power comes from keeping others out, she said, gathering her papers. They're about to learn that real power comes from letting people in. She picked up a document from her desk, a preliminary agreement already signed by several board members. Soon, very soon, the Grand Plaza Hotel would learn the true cost of judgment based on appearances, and Richard Wilson would learn that karma sometimes arrives wearing a business suit and carrying a takeover plan. The annual shareholders' meeting of the Grand Plaza Hotel Group was usually a dull affair, held in the hotel's grand ballroom with the same old faces making the same old speeches. But today was different. There was electricity in the air, and even the waiters could feel it as they served coffee to the gathered executives and shareholders. Richard Wilson stood near the back of the room, looking pleased with himself. Last week's profits were up, thanks to his selective guest policies, as he liked to call them. If only he'd noticed how many of the familiar faces in the room kept checking their phones, waiting for something. At exactly 10 a.m., the massive doors of the ballroom swung open. Rose walked in, flanked by her legal team and financial advisors. She wore a simple black suit that probably cost more than Wilson's monthly salary, but it wasn't about showing off. It was about power. The board chairman nearly choked on his coffee. He'd received some interesting phone calls over the past few weeks, but seeing Rose in person made everything suddenly real. Behind him, Wilson was still smiling, not recognizing the woman he'd turned away just weeks ago. Ladies and gentlemen, Rose began, her voice carrying clearly across the now silent room. I believe we need to discuss some changes in management. She nodded to her team, who began distributing folders to everyone present. The chairman cleared his throat. I'm sorry, but this is a private meeting for shareholders? Rose finished for him. Yes, I know. As of this morning, my investment group owns 28% of this company's shares. She paused, letting that sink in. And I have proxy agreements from shareholders representing another 30%. The room erupted in whispers. Wilson's smile finally started to fade as he flipped through the papers in front of him. Sheets of evidence detailed every discriminatory incident, every covered-up complaint, every violation of civil rights laws that had occurred under his management. Our legal team has uncovered numerous violations, Rose continued, her voice steady. Violations that could cost this company millions in lawsuits and lost business. But more importantly, they represent a failure of basic human decency. She walked to the center of the room, command in every step. This hotel group was founded 60 years ago with a mission to provide exceptional service to all guests. Somewhere along the way, certain managers. Her eyes flickered to Wilson, who had gone pale. Forgot that all means everyone, not just the people they approve of. The chairman was now sweating visibly. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No, Rose said firmly. No more hiding things behind closed doors. No more quiet settlements and covered-up complaints. It's time for real change. She pressed a button on her phone, and the large screen behind her lit up with faces, dozens of people who had been turned away from the hotel, each with their own story. Successful business owners, famous artists, respected professionals, all judged not by their achievements but by their appearance. The good news, Rose continued, is that we can fix this. My team has prepared a comprehensive plan to transform this hotel group into a true industry leader in inclusive luxury hospitality. The voting took less than an hour. With Rose's share ownership and the support of other shareholders who had seen the evidence, the outcome was never in doubt. The board was restructured, new policies were approved, and several management positions were declared vacant, including Wilson's. As the now former hotel manager stumbled toward the exit, Rose finally caught his eye. Recognition dawned on his face, followed by horror as he realized who she was and what he had done. "Mr. Wilson," she called out, her voice carrying across the now buzzing room. "I believe you suggested I try the Holiday Inn downtown. I heard they're hiring new management. You might want to look into that." The room filled with the sound of papers shuffling and excited conversations as the shareholders discussed the new direction their company would take. Rose stood by the window, watching the sun shine on the hotel's famous facade. Soon, those doors would truly be open to everyone, just as they should have been all along. "Send in the new management team," she told May. "It's time to show everyone what real hospitality looks like." The morning sun streamed through the Grand Plaza Hotel's revolving doors, casting golden light across the marble floors. It had been exactly 1 month since the shareholders' meeting that changed everything. The lobby looked the same: elegant crystal chandeliers, plush carpets, polished brass fixtures, but something in the air was different. Rose stepped through those doors again, this time accompanied by her executive team and the new board members. She wore the same navy blazer she'd worn on that first day, a small reminder of how things had come full circle. The front desk staff straightened up immediately, but their smiles were genuine now. They'd heard about the changes coming to the hotel, about the new owner who believed in treating everyone with respect. The past month had been filled with quiet but significant changes behind the scenes. Richard Wilson was still there, hanging onto his job by a thread while the ownership transition was finalized. He rushed forward the moment he saw Rose, his face a mask of desperate politeness. "Welcome to the Grand Plaza. I'm so terribly sorry about the confusion during your last visit. If I had only known." "If you had only known I was a billionaire?" Rose cut him off quietly. The lobby fell silent. "That's exactly the problem, isn't it? You think people only deserve respect if they have money or power." She looked around at the gathered staff. "But true hospitality isn't about who people are or what they own. It's about basic human dignity." Wilson's face flushed red. He tugged at his tie, looking around desperately for support, but found none. The staff he'd bullied for years kept their eyes carefully averted. "I have your final papers here," Rose said, nodding to May, who handed Wilson an envelope. "Your severance package is more generous than you deserve, considering the documented incidents we've uncovered. I suggest you take it and leave quietly." Wilson opened his mouth to protest, but something in Rose's steady gaze made him think better of it. He took the envelope with trembling hands and walked toward the exit, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As Wilson pushed through the revolving door, a young couple walked in, pulling their suitcases. The woman wore a bright hijab. Her husband carried a laptop bag with a medical conference logo. Just the kind of guests Wilson would have found an excuse to turn away. "Welcome to the Grand Plaza," Rose said warmly, stepping forward before any of the staff could react. "We're honored to have you stay with us." The couple smiled, clearly surprised to be greeted by someone they assumed was the owner. They had no idea how right they were. Rose turned to address the gathered staff, her voice firm but kind. "Starting today, things will be different at the Grand Plaza. Every guest who walks through those doors will be treated with the same respect, the same courtesy, the same excellence of service. No exceptions, no excuses." She walked to the front desk, running her hand along the polished wood. This hotel was built to be a symbol of luxury and hospitality. Somewhere along the way, it became a symbol of exclusion instead. "We're going to change that, starting right now." The staff listened intently as Rose outlined her vision for the hotel's future. No more lost reservations, no more coded signals about certain guests, no more discrimination hidden behind fake smiles and polite excuses. "We'll be investing in comprehensive training for all staff," she explained. not just in hospitality skills, but in cultural awareness and inclusive service. The Grand Plaza will set a new standard for what luxury hospitality should be. As she spoke, more guests began arriving for check-in. A famous musician Wilson had turned away last month, a family of doctors, a successful author. This time, they were all welcomed with genuine smiles and professional courtesy. Rose watched it all from near the front desk, satisfaction in her eyes. The Grand Plaza was about to show the world that true luxury wasn't about keeping people out, it was about welcoming everyone in. The Grand Plaza's largest conference room was packed. Every staff member, from housekeepers to kitchen workers to front desk clerks, sat in neat rows of chairs. The tension in the air was thick. Nobody knew exactly why they'd been called to this all-hands meeting, but rumors had been flying all morning. At exactly noon, Rose walked onto the small stage. Behind her, a large screen displayed photos of the hotel through the years, from its grand opening decades ago to the present day. She took a moment to look at the gathered staff, noting the mix of curious and nervous faces. "Most of you don't know who I am," she began, her voice warm but commanding. "Some of you might remember me from a month ago, when I was turned away from this hotel." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats, remembering that day. "What happened to me wasn't unique," Rose continued. "For years, this hotel has had two sets of rules, one for guests who fit a certain image and another for everyone else." She clicked a button, and the screen behind her began showing security footage. There was Wilson bragging about turning away undesirable guests. There were the coded phone calls about maintenance issues that mysteriously appeared whenever certain guests arrived. In the third row, the young receptionist who had tried to stand up to Wilson that day felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had hated being part of that system, but had felt powerless to change it. "I'm not here to blame the staff," Rose said firmly. "Many of you were forced to follow policies you knew were wrong. Some of you even tried to fight back, at great risk to your jobs." She smiled at the receptionist, who sat up straighter, wiping her eyes. "What I am here to tell you is that those days are over." Rose's voice grew stronger. "Because as of today, I am not just a guest who was turned away. I am the new owner of the Grand Plaza Hotel." The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Phone cameras came out, recording the moment. In the back of the room, the old management team looked like they'd been hit by lightning. "My name is Rose Chen," she continued once the noise had died down. "I built a technology company from nothing into a billion-dollar enterprise. I know what it's like to be judged by appearances rather than abilities, and I know how to fix broken systems." She clicked to the next slide, showing the hotel's new organizational chart. "Starting today, we're making big changes. First, we're implementing comprehensive anti-discrimination training for all staff. Second, we're raising wages across the board. Quality service starts with treating our employees right." The room broke into applause. Rose waited for it to quiet down before continuing. "Third, we're promoting from within. That young woman who stood up to Mr. Wilson last month, she's our new head of guest relations. The housekeeper who quit rather than participate in discrimination, she's coming back as our new head of housekeeping." More applause, louder this time. Rose could see hope dawning on faces that had been beaten down by years of toxic management. "But most importantly," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room, "we're changing the culture. No more discrimination, no more lost reservations, no more judging people by anything except their character and behavior." She clicked one final time, and the screen showed the hotel's new motto, "Luxury means welcome for all." "Some of you might be wondering why I didn't just file a lawsuit when I was turned away," Rose said, wrapping up her speech. "It's because changing things from the outside is temporary. Real change has to come from within." She looked around the room, meeting eyes with staff members who had suffered under the old system, "and that change starts today with all of us." The standing ovation lasted for 5 full minutes. As Rose looked out at the cheering crowd, she saw tears, smiles, and most importantly, hope. The Grand Plaza was about to become what it should have been all along, a place where true hospitality meant welcoming everyone with open arms and open hearts. Over the next 6 months, the Grand Plaza Hotel underwent a transformation that was nothing short of remarkable. The physical building remained the same elegant structure it had always been, but the spirit inside had changed completely. The morning sun streamed through the lobby's tall windows as Rose walked through, watching the daily operations with quiet satisfaction. At the front desk, the young woman she'd promoted to head of guest relations was checking in an elderly couple, her smile genuine and warm. The husband was using a wheelchair, and within seconds, a bellhop appeared to help them navigate to their room. "Our accessible suites have been fully renovated," Rose overheard the front desk manager explaining. "We've partnered with disability advocates to make sure every guest has the best possible experience." The couple beamed, clearly not used to such thoughtful service. In the hotel's grand restaurant, the new executive chef, a brilliant woman who'd been passed over for promotion under the old management, was teaching a cooking class to a group of excited guests. The kitchen staff, now paid well above industry standard, worked with pride and enthusiasm. "The occupancy rates are up 40%, May reported, falling into step beside Rose as they walked through the hotel. "And our customer satisfaction scores are the highest they've been in the hotel's history." Rose nodded, pausing to watch a group of international business travelers check in. Under the old management, some of them might have faced mysterious booking problems. Now they were being welcomed with the same warmth and respect as any other guest. The transformation hadn't been easy. The first month had been dedicated entirely to training, not just in hospitality skills, but in cultural awareness and inclusive service. Some staff members had resisted the changes at first, stuck in old habits and prejudices. Rose had given them a choice: adapt to the new way of doing things or find employment elsewhere. Most had chosen to stay and learn. "The scholarship program is ready to launch," Mai continued, pulling up details on her tablet. Rose had established a fund to help minority students study hospitality management, complete with guaranteed internships at the Grand Plaza. "We've already received over 300 applications." They stopped by the hotel's newly renovated conference center, where a diversity and inclusion workshop was in progress. Hotels from across the city had been sending their staff to learn from the Grand Plaza's example. What had started as one hotel's transformation was spreading throughout the industry. "Remember that famous musician Wilson turned away?" Mai asked with a smile. "He'd just booked the presidential suite for his entire band next month. And that surgeon who got rejected, she's hosting an international medical conference here in the fall." Rose watched as a young family checked in, their children's eyes wide at the grandeur of the lobby. The parents looked a bit nervous, probably wondering if they'd be welcome in such a fancy place. The front desk staff immediately put them at ease, even giving the kids special welcome packets with activity books and colored pencils. "You know what the best part is?" Rose said, turning to Mai. "Nobody here is doing this because they have to. They're doing it because they've learned that true hospitality means making everyone feel valued." Later that afternoon, Rose sat in on a staff meeting where employees shared stories about their most memorable guest interactions. A housekeeper talked about helping an elderly guest find her lost wedding ring. A room service waiter described making a special meal for a guest with dietary restrictions. A front desk clerk told how she'd helped a lost child reunite with his parents. These were the moments that defined the new Grand Plaza, not the expensive furnishings or fancy amenities, but the genuine care shown to every guest who walked through its doors. As the sun set over Manhattan, casting long shadows through the lobby's crystal chandeliers, Rose stood at the same spot where she'd been turned away all those months ago. The space felt different now, warmer, more welcoming. Like a home that had finally opened its doors to all who wished to enter. "Ms. Chen," the front desk manager called out, "the new guest feedback reports are in. Would you like to see them?" Rose smiled, already knowing what they would say. The Grand Plaza wasn't just a hotel anymore, it was proof that success and inclusivity could go hand in hand, and that true luxury meant making everyone feel like they belonged. 1 year had passed since Rose first walked through the doors of the Grand Plaza Hotel. The morning newspapers spread across her desk told an impressive story. "Hotel chain sets new industry standards for inclusive luxury," read one headline. "Grand Plaza becomes most profitable hotel in Manhattan," declared another. But it wasn't the profits that made Rose smile as she walked through the lobby that morning. It was the scene before her. A busy hotel humming with life and genuine warmth. Every kind of guest imaginable moved through the space. business travelers, tourists, families, celebrities, all treated with the same impeccable service and respect. At the front desk, a young trainee was learning the ropes. She was part of the first class of scholarship students from Rose's hospitality program, her eyes bright with enthusiasm as she greeted guests. The girl's trainer was none other than the receptionist who had once tried to stand up to Wilson, now the hotel's most respected manager. "Have you seen this?" Maid asked, hurrying up to Rose with her tablet. She pulled up a social media post that was going viral. A well-known travel blogger had shared their experience at the Grand Plaza. "A year ago, I was turned away from this hotel. Today, I hosted my wedding here. The transformation is incredible. This is what happens when leadership actually cares about people." The post had thousands of comments, many sharing similar stories of their own experiences at the new Grand Plaza. But what caught Rose's eye was a comment from an unexpected source, Richard Wilson himself. "I was wrong," his comment read. "Working at a budget motel these past months has taught me more about hospitality than my years at the Grand Plaza. I judged people by their appearance, and I was completely wrong. I'm sorry." Rose showed the comment to May, who raised her eyebrows in surprise. "People can change," Rose said quietly. "Sometimes they just need a push in the right direction." The afternoon brought a special event. The hotel was hosting a conference on diversity in the hospitality industry. Hotel managers from across the country had come to learn how the Grand Plaza had transformed itself from a symbol of exclusion to a beacon of inclusion while increasing its profits. Rose took the stage to give the keynote speech. Looking out at the packed room, she saw faces filled with curiosity and hope. "Success in hospitality isn't about keeping people out," she told them. "It's about letting everyone in and treating them with dignity. When you do that, profits follow naturally." After the speech, a young hotel owner approached Rose with tears in her eyes. "I used to dream of running a hotel like the Grand Plaza," she said. "But I always thought places like this weren't meant for people like me. You changed that. You showed us all what's possible." That evening, Rose stood at her favorite spot by the window, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold. The lobby below was busy with guests checking in for the night. A famous musician chatted casually with a family of tourists. A group of international business executives shared travel tips with a couple celebrating their anniversary. May joined her at the window, holding the latest guest satisfaction reports. "We're not just the most profitable hotel in Manhattan anymore," she said proudly. "We're the most highly rated for guest satisfaction across all categories." Rose nodded, thinking back to that first day when she'd been turned away. "You know what's funny?" she said. "Wilson thought he was protecting this hotel's reputation by keeping certain people out. He never understood that reputation is built by how you treat everyone who walks through your doors." As night fell over the city, the Grand Plaza's lights shone like a beacon. Inside, guests from all walks of life enjoyed the same luxury, the same respect, the same warm welcome. The hotel had become more than just a success story. It was a symbol of change, a reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, but about making things better for everyone. And somewhere in New Jersey, a former hotel manager read about the Grand Plaza's success and learned the most expensive lesson of his career, that true luxury isn't about exclusion, but about making everyone feel like they belong.